Welcome to another edition of the New World Colloquy series that we are hosting at the Fast Food and Cafe Virtual Expo. Through the series, we bring to you one on one conversations with stalwarts from the industry. And to share his perspective on the remodeling of the QSR industry, we have with us today the person who's responsible for steering Pizza Hut to the next phase of growth across the Asia Pacific region, Unnat Verma, Managing Director of Pizza Hut Asia Pacific. And interviewing him is Sreyoshi Maitra, an independent consumer insights consultant with 18 years in leading market research agencies. So, well, let's dive straight in. Over to you, Sreyoshi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful that despite the craziness outside, we can still meet and talk about things that are important. To start with, Unnat, I wanted to kind of get your sense on the fact that online ordering had been on a rise. It had been on a rise for a while now. And with the pandemic, it's almost kind of accelerated because it's become a need. So even when things get better and we come back to the world where it is possible to go to you know restaurants to have food, do you see the in dining experience becoming less relevant?
Well, it's very difficult to say what's going to happen to the in-dining experience at this point of time. Clearly, what's visible and what we can see in the outside world is a huge slowdown of the dining experience. And because of the social distancing norms, the capacity of restaurants has certainly come down to 50% or even lesser. And so, in the foreseeable future, there are going to be terrible headwinds on the in-dining experience. But even when it starts to gradually open up, like we are seeing in some parts of Asia Pacific, where life is almost getting back to normal. In fact, in China, it's almost back to normal, right? We are seeing a little bit of a shift in consumer habits. So, for example, from pre-pandemic times, where sharing a common dish used to be a very common thing amongst groups of people or families. That is no longer happening. Even if when you get to an in-dining restaurant in a group, you tend to order individual meals. Digital has taken a fresh new meaning inside the dining stores, where you have now contactless menu cards, contactless payment options. In fact, very little interaction with people inside the store. So some of these new trends and new habits are going to continue. But to your question, will that dining business come back in its full glory? Well, not in the foreseeable future, not at least over the next 6 to 12 months.
So keeping in mind that this whole no touch way of serving food is going to become more important to us, because while the industry has seen a slowdown, we will look at different ways of getting back to business. Do you see technology playing a big role in that? And if yes, how?
Oh, technology is going to play a pivotal role in that. See, no touch or contactless was actually pioneered by Pizza Hut in China when the incident first occurred, and we had a significant home service menu, and we are the biggest pizza player in that market. We had to think of ways of giving customers a great, trusted brand experience. So it was pioneered, and then we looked at all possible ways that consumers interact with our brand, and we extended no touch in all possible interactions. In fact, we opened up new avenues for customers to interact with the brand through no touch. So it wasn't just limited to a delivery rider going to someone's home to deliver pizzas and maintaining social distance, or a no touch payment interaction, but it went on to curbside. So in some countries where carry out is a big opportunity, we realized that customers would be very apprehensive of walking into the stores, but they're very comfortable about driving up their cars up to the store, as long as someone can come and open the back door and keep the pizza in the back seat or keep it in the boot. So that got a fresh new meaning of contactless carry out or delivery. And then we have seen some of these things getting manifested within the four walls of the store as well. So like I was talking about, contactless menus, contactless payment options. So contactless has played a very big role. And this part has actually given customers a more in some sense, a trusted brand experience, in the sense the customers can now start trusting brands to say that if I have a contactless option, then at least I have so much, separation, physical separation between two human beings, which is what customers are looking for at this point of time.
Great. Now, a little, this is not so much in context of the current pandemic because uh, certain things in terms of consumer behavior, which I've seen as a consumer insights professional, seem to be, irrespective of what times we are going through. So, given that, especially online ordering allows people to choose from a wide variety, do you think consumers, especially in terms of food, are becoming more experimentative in India, or do you think that people stick to a small repertoire?
Well, if you look at generally pre-pandemic, how online was growing, I think the former was true, where customers were getting fairly experimentative. In fact, all possible food concepts were becoming accessible to customers on a mobile app, right? So all kinds of food concepts were making into their homes, whether it's familiar food or street food or snacking items or different kinds of cuisines from all around the world. But the behavior has dramatically changed after the pandemic. And what we've seen is that now customers around the globe are gravitating towards brands that they know and they trust. And the levels of experimentation during this time has dramatically gone down. So, comfort food, extremely familiar and known food, has become mainstay during this particular period of time. There's been a dramatic shift in behavior.
So just keeping in mind what you just said, so does bahar ka khana, like we say it colloquially, does that play into many more occasions now? Because the role of food in a house arrest kind of a scenario is not just nutrition, right? Food has become entertainment, food has become comfort, food has often become even respite, right? So keeping that in mind, have you seen like more newer food occasions emerge?
Well, if you talk to me about the context outside of India within the Asia Pacific geography, answer is yes. Uh, as consumers were locked in at home, and in a lot of Asian countries, especially in highly congested urban centers, homes were not really geared for having a full blown cooking experience at home. In fact, in a lot of places, you didn't even have full blown kitchens because the culture of eating out was very high and highly prevalent. As consumers had to stay back at home, they obviously started to order various kinds of things from outside. So we've seen that in a youngster's life today, there is no concept called three meals, right? Typically, consumers have more than three. Some have four, some have even five meals. There is a concept of late night. There is a concept of an evening snack. There is a concept of a midday snack between meals. So, given these different occasions, a lot of new food concepts and a lot of new food types have become relevant during this time. But the story in India was a little different because of, unfortunately, some cases getting discovered within the, the food service fraternity. So some aggregator partners had some cases, and that took a little bit of trust beating in terms of if I order from an aggregator platform, is that going to be, hygienic? Will the food be handled well and stuff? So I think consumers in India have passed through a period of saying, let's totally avoid outside food. That's something that has been very unique to India and not in other parts of the world. But now, as things have stabilized or they're beginning to come back to a little bit of normalcy, we are seeing that the business is actually picking up, and consumers are beginning to order. So typically, in the earlier times, the business used to peak during weekends. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, dinner time is like big business time. That is beginning to come back. So to me, that is an indication of trust beginning to come back in the minds and lives of consumers. And hopefully, this will open up many more occasions as consumers want to experiment but want to do it in the comfort of their homes.
Uh, in that context, there's always a question that keeps coming up that given that there are more occasions, and let's for a moment not consider the pandemic. Generally, there are more occasions of ordering in, and people don't kind of restrict it to maybe weekends only. They also ordering during weekdays. So keeping that in mind, and I'm talking about the times even before the pandemic. Uh, Is there a tendency of ordering in food or having bahar ka khana becoming far more functional?
Yeah, yes, you can say that it's becoming far more functional because for consumers, right? When you have a hunger bank and you have, you have access to a restaurant on your fingertip, it's very easy. So the entire ecosystem, especially on the online space, had made things extremely accessible and easy for the customers. And therefore, home ordering became fairly functional. And also to say that when consumers were looking at special experiences, they would then, dress up for it and get ready for it and go outside. So the outside space became more special occasions, special experiences, while the home meal ordering became more functional. You're right to that extent.
Oh, also we've seen a lot of smaller players come into being, the home chefs and the home bakers, etc., come into being, especially and more so during the pandemic, I would say, because anybody who, I mean, it is a little low entry kind of a scene, honestly, and sustainability is difficult. But if people decide that I want to cater to only this small area, and I'm okay to kind of serve only that much, and I will work within a niche, then they kind of do operate. So have you seen that? What do you think of this phenomena? Do you think it's going to be short term, or do you think there are going to be some people who are going to settle in and be there would be a like a semi section of home chefs in the apps eventually, which people can order in from? What do you think of this small this trend coming up?
See, it's very difficult for me to say that because typically when I make statements, I see that coming emerging from either trends or data. In the food space, there are a lot of these initiatives that fly under the radar. It's such a huge category. It is such a common category. Everyone has some of the other specialty that they are known for or they want to have. And so a lot of these initiatives fly under the radar. And unless something becomes, a scale, multi distribution point kind of concept, some of these things never come to notice. But if I were to see from what constitutes success of a food concept, right? And if I pass it through those filters, so the filters of making a food concept successful are consistency, high quality, catering to surge in demand, and becoming popular because of a combination of a great taste plus great price that you charge, or the value for the money, and quality, the triangulation of these three things. uh, it just seems difficult for in some sense a cottage industry to deliver on all three promises, because for example sourcing is such an intricate piece where you talk about sustainable sourcing, you talk about ethical sourcing, and as some of these trends become important in consumers' lives, mom and pop or home chefs will not be able to have access to that kind of a supply chain network. They would go and buy vegetables and processed meat, etc., from the neighborhood shops. That is good, but you cannot carry a certificate to say I have ethical sourcing on this. So therefore therefore, like I said, there are a lot of concepts that come up and they fly under the radar, and some of them do well, and good luck to them. I think it's a great occupation for a lot of people who are at home and they want to make, either out of interest or out of passion, they want to make a business out of it. There's a huge opportunity out there. But beyond this, I will not be able to comment on what's happening in the industry.
Sure. If we just consider two kinds of players that we typically see. One are the chains, and the other are well-known restaurants, which are not necessarily chains, which in uh, typical marketing parlance we used to call destination for consumers, that they go to that place or they definitely buy from that place because one or two or three of the things on the menu are destination menus, right? So in a situation like that, where right now a lot of other filters have come into being. I mean, even if I really love the food that you order, if you don't have that safety tag, possibly I'm letting you pass. Possibly my consideration set has been far more clearly identified. So in a situation like this, where there are multiple other things that we need to keep in mind, and a bigger player will be able to do it much better than the smaller ones. In such a situation, what role does food innovation play? How can you use that to differentiate, or is that not going to be so easy in times like now?
See, times like now, like I said, consumers are gravitating towards more familiar kind of food, something that they have grown up with, something they can trust, and innovation has taken a backseat. So this is not the time to launch a new product or a new concept. It is not going to fly with the consumer. And when you talk about global or domestic scale players versus non-scale individual experiential-led players, the thing is that um, the latter, which is the small, the single, restaurant operators who stood for a special dish, they have really struggled because a lot of their business was built on getting customers into their four walls, and that has totally vanished, right? um, and I mean, when you have a single store or maybe two or three or five stores, you cannot have your own online business. Then you have to depend on third party players, and third party players also have had severe headwinds, at least over the last 2 or 3 months. So this has been a very tough time for these individual players, and this is the time where overall eating out or consuming outside food has gone down. But within the shrunk size, I think the more trusted, the more scale players, the more easily accessible players on online have taken the march ahead. As you go forward and as restaurants begin to open up, consumers will slowly start trickling back to some of their favorite foods. And so some of these concepts will still survive and they will open up their shops. Unfortunately, it's a reality that some concepts might not. Right? So that's the reality, unfortunately.
Also, during times like now, what are some of the ways in which large players like Yum can retain customers? Because I understand it is going to be difficult for newer players to come in and break in, because there is only so much that they can offer, and possibly they will lose in the faith game. But how does big players like Yum kind of try and retain people? And people who are regular customers of Yum, to ensure that they keep buying from Pizza Hut or KFC? How does that? How are you
See,
looking at that?
we believe that there are two or three very big consumer trends that are shaping up that will change the way consumers interact with food players. One of them is the digital ecosystem. And a lot of consumers who were either watching digital from a distance but were not indulging, or they had a huge discomfort, have had to necessarily experience digital. And so some of these habits are now going to stay. And so one of the things we believe is that as long as you have a world class digital experience where you give customers a trusted brand experience in online space, and that comes with, there are parts of the online experience. You have to have a great e-commerce platform where customers can easily access your food and have an easy ordering experience and checkout experience. Now the moment you have the customer doing that, you capture the customer data and start talking to the customer at a certain frequency with a certain kind of offer that you believe is right for the customer. That is a way to retain the customers, because there is going to be a permanent shift in the ways consumers are interacting with brands. And I think digital is going to be a lead reason. So because we are at the forefront of a digital transformation, and our brands actually are doing some stellar work across geographies on giving customers that absolutely superlative brand experience through digital, we believe we have all the recipes in place to retain customers as we go forward.
The other thing that we've seen across a lot of work that I've done in my career on food is the biggest, almost like to say, the test of fire and stone for a food brand is to match expectations with delivery. And a lot of times we've seen that it's great promise. And this is not only limited to smaller players. We see this happening to a lot of players, especially premium brands go through this, because why should I pay that extra bit of money for you? Uh, on in terms of pizza, there are loads of brands now available, and what is that one or two thing, especially if you're not a mid-price brand and you have competition cheaper than you, what are the one or two things that you've seen work well to ensure that people don't fall off your, your when you drop you from the considerations?
See, like you're talking about scale
I mean,
brands.
especially now, which is where people possibly are a little more price conscious than they were earlier, because everyone's struggling with money.
So value is going to be very important. The price you pay for the quantity and the quality of food you get and the quality of experience is going to be extremely important. And the bigger you are, the more better value for the money you will have to provide, because there is a far bigger pool of customers that is using you, and you have to be very very relevant, especially during these times you rightly pointed out. Um, this is the rise of a very these times will give rise to an extremely value conscious customer, a customer who expects the best in class quality, the best in class customer experience at the most competitive prices. And the brands that are able to offer this will survive. The brands that are not able to offer this will perhaps survive, but at a smaller scale. So getting scale during these times is not going to be easy.
The other thing that you kind of just mentioned, that given that right now a large part of our interaction with brand is through the physical product, given that they are not being able to come to the stores, right? So how do you differentiate an experience, given that experience is going to not happen so much, given they won't walk into the stores? Possibly I could have made a difference with my service at the store. Now I'm not being able to do that. So how do I ensure that whatever opportunities of interaction I have with the consumer, I can pass on that in some way or the other?
It's a very good question. You're right in saying that when customers come to your restaurants, you have your people, your ambience, your air conditioning, your everything comes together and giving customers a great experience. Now, how do you recreate that in the offline space or when consumers are sitting at home? I think there are two parts to it. There are table stakes that you have to play with. So, giving customers a great online experience. The moment customers log into your app or your website, how easy is it to for them to identify what they want to buy, for them to get the offer seamlessly. There are brands that will say, hey, get 50% off on my product, but when you go into the website, you first have to look for it like with a tooth comb, and then there are 20,000 terms and conditions attached to it. Now those brands will not succeed. So you have to walk the talk. If you're giving an offer, make sure it is upfront, it is clear for the customers, easy to access, no terms and conditions and stuff like that, right? So that to me is table stakes. The fact that you can get into a website, the web page loads under 2 seconds, you're able to do 3 clicks and check out, you have 5 different kinds of payment gateway options. And once all of this is done, you get a confirmation of the order that yes, your order has been received. And then you have some kind of a tracking mechanism to say, okay, now the order is in the kitchen, now the rider has picked it up, now the rider is on the way, now the rider has come to your doorsteps. I mean, these are basics of giving customers a trusted brand experience. And like I said, all of these are table stakes. Now, let me share some examples with you of some of the great work our franchise partners have done in some geographies. So, for example, we continue to have call centers in some markets where customers still, pick up the phone and place the order on Pizza Hut on a telephone line. Now, as the telephone business or the call order volumes went down during these times, we had a call center staff, and we could have said either let's give them, let's furlough them, let them sit from home and come only when the demand picks up. But in some cases, our franchise partners took the lead of saying that we have a huge amount of customer data, and let's just call up the customers and check how they're doing. So with no intention of asking for a business or an order, we just called up the customers, because there was a time when customers sitting within their homes, either they were lonely or they were just bored of sitting with the same 3 or 4 people at home for a long duration of time, right? And so a call like this inquiring about, hey, how are you doing, how's your health, are you feeling okay, how's the food scene like, and stuff like that, just having an open interaction has meant a world of a different customer experience for them. So the brands that understand customers and connect with them in new ways. So like I mentioned, there is the hygiene factor. You have to have the hygiene in place for any of this to work. But on top of the hygiene factor, brands like ours that have an infrastructure can interact with the customers and give them a great experience, which is what we have seen. So the recovery in the business, in one of the cases, I remember in the worst case, our business was down to almost half its original size. But when the business started to open up and coming back in a big way, we went from like almost a minus 50% growth to or decline to a positive 15% in a matter of 2 weeks. Because when you build the equation with customers and the relationship with customers, it plays out in very, very different ways. So yeah, that's one of the things that you can think of. Thinking about the cake and then the icing on the cake and offering customers differentiated experiences.
You talked about a seamless experience on the app. What role does, especially in a country like ours, what role does the aggregators play both in terms of adding to your experience or taking away from it?
See, aggregators. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm seeing. And have you seen that make a difference? So, for example, if somebody consistently, orders from your app versus people who don't, because I guess we like, I mean, Indians like a bazaar market. We always step into a place where there is a bazaar because that's how we've grown up, right? So this choice seems to be a wonderful thing, even if you don't exercise choice. So we were talking to some aggregators the other day, and we were seeing that people actually stick to 4 or 5 restaurants, but they like the fact that they have 500, even if they don't choose from it, right? So even in modern trade, we know that everyone goes to the same aisle, but they like the fact that there are 21 other aisles. So the role of this, uh, choice that people seem to have, especially now when they're feeling extremely claustrophobic, possibly make them, log into aggregators. So does that do there are there things that you do to ensure that it does not mar the experience in some way, or it doesn't take away from the brand, if not adding to it, at least not taking away from it?
See, aggregators are food tech companies, and they understand technology really well. So, in terms of giving customers a great online experience where customers can come and have a great interaction with their different brands and have a seamless ordering experience on the online platform, I think aggregators do a pretty good job. That's their bread and butter. And now, when it comes down to so the ordering experience is good. And when it comes down to delivering the order, that is where we have seen that if the aggregators are able to deliver on the basic functional promise of delivering food on the committed time, I think they're doing a pretty good job, right? But when there is an order surge or when you don't have enough staff on the ground and you'll end up delaying your orders, that is when the customer experience goes for a little bit of a spin. And uh, and that's where we almost have our own fleet at the same time to say that when an order comes on our platform, we'll make sure we give customers the best experience because we understand our trade areas around the store, we understand the drive times, we understand the shortest routes, we understand how do you get the food fastest to your customers. And so the ordering experience tends to be the best and the customer tends to be the best on your own brand platforms. But we also make sure through the use of technology and some checks and balances in place and ongoing discussions with the aggregator partners that if there are some outliers in a similar experience, we're able to highlight this to them. And our aggregator partners have had tremendous partnership with us. So, for example, if you have a restaurant where there has been a huge surge in order and the aggregator orders have got the servicing through aggregators has got delayed because of less number of riders, after a quick discussion, they have immediately allocated more riders into that particular trade area to take care of the surge. So thank God for times like these where you have adequate data to figure out at a national level, do a heat mapping to say which are my red hot zones and can I prioritize my people and over resource those areas. I think all of that is falling in place. And overall, over time, I think customers are getting a pretty good experience.
Just looking at the current situation, and we know that we don't know the future as well. We can at best conjecture. What are some of the things that you would say are an absolute no-no for the food service industry to be very careful not to, make those mistakes right now?
Well, difficult to say what is absolute no no. I think okay. Let's look at the consumer trends, right? Huge preference we are seeing uh, for brands that consumers can trust, and trust can never be built overnight. Trust has to be built every single day of your operation through high quality, food and ingredients and execution and people and processes and all of that. This is something you can't do overnight, right? But um, but let's talk about what's important to customers right now. Trust is extremely important. Second is consistency is extremely important. So whatever I order, is it consistent every time? Is the taste, is the quantity the same as I did last time? That's number two. Third, increasingly, like I mentioned a while ago, value is very important. Value for the money is extremely important. Wallets are getting lighter, money is getting tighter, and for most of the customers there, and so value for the money is going to be very very important, and and what is not important at this time, at this point of time, is some fancy innovation that you do once in a year or twice in a year to get some attention and eyeballs. Those kind of things are not working right now. So coming in from consumer trends, I think then it is a straight line interpretation of what brands should be doing or should not be doing at this point of time.
Okay, my absolute last question, and this is a little bit from some of the work that I've done recently. We found that, initially, and if you do a quick search of Instagram, you'll get this very nicely. That initially, when the pandemic happened, everyone was very happy to be with family, right? I mean, we don't get to spend so much time, and we are cooking together and watching movies together and all of that. And but however, you hadn't signed up for that. You hadn't signed up to have your husband home for so long. Kids hadn't signed up to have both their parents home for so long. So eventually, very much like a story, it started boiling and people kind of got quite fed up. And if you watch even, and I did an analysis of this to social media, and if you watch even the same sort of people, we've moved from beautiful lasagnas to Maggie, right? Because you now want to just get it out. So in such a situation, we found that food has a very important role to play just because of the dopamine that it kind of gives you, and it it plays a much larger role. And maybe I'm making a big statement here, but in helping you to stay happy, right? And a lot of occasions we found out were actually solo occasions where people like me time. But typically, when they order in, there aren't really solo meals available like that, apart from the fact that you could just pick one instead of two. The other interesting trend that we saw, that even if people are eating together, they're not necessarily sharing. They're just eating what they want. Like, I eat what I want, the wife eats what they want, the child eats what they want, because at least to try and give people a little bit of autonomy in this situation where there is almost no autonomy. You all have to be huddled together, under the same surname. So in this situation, do you feel that food has a different role to play, or food can possibly maybe simulate certain occasions or curate meals which could be a little more around that?
See, the beauty that today you can order anything from 20 rupees to 200 to 2000, and it will get delivered. It just opens up a world of possibilities for the home service occasion. So I'll share my personal experience. When we are sitting together at the end of all our office meetings and online calls and all that stuff, finally we call it a day, and we all sit together as a family and have our meals. And the time when we're ordering, the four of us might have four different preferences. The twain doesn't meet, especially when you have teenage kids at home. And so what do you end up doing? The daughter wants Chinese, the son wants a pizza, my wife wants maybe some pasta, and I want my Indian food. And today it's a possibility, right? So I think the ecosystem or the environment has offered, or the business ideas in the market that have got developed over the last so many years have given that independence to customers. That I believe is a magical thing, because you want to have your own individual preferences, your tastes, your likes, but you want to continue to sit in a group setting and enjoy your family moments. As again saying, oh no, it's the same old stuff. We just had the same stuff last week. I am so fed up of you guys. I'm not sitting with you. That is actually a a worst thing to happen. So I think the family bonding or the me time or the not the me time, the us time between the family gets less frictionless with options that are available to customers at this point of time. That's a huge boon.
Great. Thanks so much for your time, Munat. It was lovely listening to you. And thanks, me, for making this opportunity. And thanks to Fast Food Cafe Convention. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and your team, and through you to all the people who attend your conventions. There are many experts in the field. Everyone has their own respective experiences. What I've shared today is my collective experience of what's happening in the Asia Pacific geography as well as in India. And this, what I've spoken about, largely represents the experience we are going through in about 21 countries in Asia Pacific. So hopefully it's helpful. And in case you want to reach out to me for any further insights, I'll be more than happy to share. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much.